Hello there. This is the very first IT Club podcast, and we are going to run the pilot. We are not sure how it goes, and today we have a guest, David Chang. He's working as a director of engineering in Takeoff Technologies, where I'm working also, and uh, we want to talk about journey into the IT because we all started at one point. And um, hello, David.
Hi, Vlad. Thank you for having me on this. Excited to be
Yeah.
here.
So, can you share your story? When it begins, how, why you choose to become the IT specialist, and what the most interesting challenges did you face on this way, especially at the very beginning?
Yeah, sure. So I generally start my story at pretty close to the very beginning. My parents are both in engineering. My mom is a software QA with a lot of automation. My dad is he was PhD in electrical engineering and went off to become a professor for computer engineering. And so a lot of our my childhood was we had more computers in the house than people, and that's saying a lot because I have three younger siblings, so there was six of us, and we'd always have at least six, if not more than six computers. The really old school ones. But
Cool.
I spent my entire childhood around computers and getting to be familiarized with them. Um, yeah, so I mean, growing up, it's kind of funny. Being of Taiwanese descent, my parents are very traditional and very, heavy on education. Wanted me to go to Harvard or MIT here in Boston, and eventually wanted me to go off and become a doctor. As engineers, there's a stereotype that if your parents are engineers, they want you to be a doctor or a lawyer. If your parents are a doctor or a lawyer, they want you to be an engineer. And so, I was of the former camp, where my parents they didn't want me to go into engineering because that's what they were in, and they wanted to go be a doctor. And so my story is actually, it's sort of non-traditional in the sense that I spent a lot of my high school years and my college years prepping to become a doctor. And so I did all of my pre-med courses. I took the MCAT, which is the standardized exam to apply to medical school. I actually bounced between different sciences as my major in college. And so, I went from bio to physics to chemistry. And then, ultimately, my junior year of college, without having taken a single class in computer science, decided to major in computer science blindly, because I have a passion for computers. And I spoke with my health advisor, and she said, "Hey, you don't need to have a science major if you want to apply to med school. They treat all majors the same." And so I took that advice to heart. I was still planning on applying to medical school, but I decided to declare computer science as my major, and I took my first intro to computer science class my junior fall. So with 2 years left, I was able to manage. I was able to manage cramming all of the courses necessary in those remaining 2 years to get the major in computer science. So that's kind of my journey from going from this world of health and healthcare to IT.
And what was the reaction of your parents?
Honestly, they were fine with it because the plan was still for me to apply to medical school. And so, upon graduation, I had planned to take a year off, work for 1 year. We call it a gap year in the U.S. as a software engineer. I heard from many of my friends that graduated prior to me graduating that software engineers were paid the highest salary straight out of school. And so I said, you know what? That doesn't hurt. Why don't I work as a software engineer for a year while I apply to medical school? And then, I can make some money in the meantime, because all I hear from my med school friends are that they're poor. and they can't afford anything. And so I was like, before I make myself super poor and not be able to afford anything, let me try to work as a software engineer for a year, make good money, and then go to med school. So yeah, that was my plan. Ultimately, what ended up happening was my first 2 months of, so I ended up applying to lots of different companies. There was this one company called Athena Health that took a chance on me as a recent college grad with no experience. They were specifically hiring straight out of school people with potential, and it happened to be in the healthcare space, and so I accepted the job, knowing that it would help my application to med school. So that was my first job out of school.
And did you apply to medical school after this?
So yeah, I mean, like, so my first 2 months on the job, I was, having no experience. I was worried every single day that I was going to get fired, because I wasn't contributing. I was only learning on the job and trying to figure things out. At that time, we were working in Perl, it's a scripting language, and I had not known Perl. They did not require that I knew Perl prior to coming. Their hiring philosophy was hire people with potential and they can learn on the job. And so, every single day as I was scared that I was going to get fired and lose my job because I wasn't contributing, I spent a lot of time learning, how to work within the code base, the established code base that was there, and then how I could actually proactively contribute. And again, this being my first job, I was constantly scared of being fired, but thankfully, it sort of gave me the push to learn as much as I could. After about 2 months of being in this job and learning, and the amount of reward that I got from actually providing, real world value, I had decided to withdraw my applications to med school and pursue this as a full-time career. My parents, I think at this point, they respected this decision. They were somewhat sad and somewhat disappointed. Even to this day, I'm 37 years old. My mom asked me, I think last year, when I'm going to quit this engineering thing and actually go become a real doctor. So I think in their mind, it's never over until it's over. But yeah, I think since then, they've readjusted, and they're, I'd say they are proud of me and kind of what I've accomplished in my career. I'd say I'm pretty happy with where I'm at and the journey that I went through to get here.
It's strange that because in the mind of I don't know about the whole world, but in our part, we always had a expectation that doctors in the US are richest people. And you're saying that all your friends was poor. That's a little bit unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, it's a curve, like when you're in med school, you're in debt because you're paying off your loans for med school, right? Like you're getting loans for med school, and then post med school you have to do a residency. Residency doctors are not paid very much, right? Until you actually use it. So basically, you have to spend much of your youth kind of working really, really hard for a low pay just to get trained. And then, once you hit like 30, 35 years old, that's when your career starts. And then that's when your salary starts to sort of increase exponentially. So, I'd say, like, don't get me wrong, a lot of my doctor friends now are very rich. They're very wealthy, much better off than I am. But I would say, I spent a good amount of my 20s feeling very satisfied and fulfilled by picking up the skills that I picked up throughout the years within and not just engineering, but honestly, entrepreneurship, business, leadership, management. There's a lot of different things that I think I got to experience by being in this field, and I'm really grateful for that.
And what was how long you was on your first job, and what was the next move?
Yeah, so honestly, it's kind of atypical to spend. So I spent 11 and a half years at my first job. 11 and a half years at the same.
Half years?
Yeah, same company. And it's not. It was. I started when the company was about 500 employees, and when I left, it was around 5,000. It went through an IPO, a private acquisition. Sorry. We went from private to public and then back to private again in the time that I was there. And throughout those 11 and a half years, I would say that I've had probably 5 different jobs. I attribute a lot of my career growth to the opportunities that I had at Athena Health. And I started off as a junior developer, not having any sort of practical skills. I took the data structures, algorithms, all the standard courses you'd take in college, but none of which were practical towards, doing real world work. But I'd say I picked up a lot of those skills and sort of, became a independent, self-contributing developer, in which I got promoted from junior to, essentially what is like an intermediate developer. I'd say I spent a good amount of my youth sort of enjoying the fact that I was making a lot more money than my friends. And so didn't really focus on the career aspect and really just focused on the get my job done and then go spend my money aspect of things. But then there was I had this one boss that I had that really saw a lot of potential in me, and basically sat me down and said, David, you could be doing so much more. Like I see you as a natural born leader. I don't want to see you throwing away, coming in, clocking in, and then clocking out. And I guess because of this manager, the belief in me, I started to step it up at work. And I took lead. I decided to try taking lead on a project despite not having the title. And was just very, very happy that I did, because while it was challenging, I learned a lot of skills around, tech design, working with others, collaborating with non-technical people, pretty much everything that it takes to succeed in a technical role. And as a result of this, I was promoted to a senior software engineer.
You mentioned that at the very beginning, when you just started, it was enormous amount of learning. So what you mostly used, and did you only use your working time for education, or you had something more?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, give it, as I said, because of the fear of getting fired, I felt like I had to use every waking moment to learn in the very, very beginning. When I finally realized that, engineering is a world where, where experimentation and failure is encouraged, I started to ease off a little bit more. But, I definitely spent a lot of my work time, exploring others' code, reading it, running it, testing it. I would say the evenings during my free time, I would expand my knowledge on things like syntax or tech design or common patterns and anti-patterns. And so there's lots of different ways in which I took learning. Honestly, I would say the thing that helped me the most was being not just learning on my own, but learning through others. And so the first job that I have, it was a very collaborative job. We in healthcare is very regulated here in the US, and every single line of code has to be reviewed by someone else. And so we were very diligent about this. And not only did I review others' code and learn from that, but I also had other people review my code and give me very, very pointed feedback, and basically explained why behind the changes that they would request that I make. And so, because of that sort of collaborative learning structure, I would say it really did help me kind of propel my career.
And what was the most challenging about this education, and especially code review, getting feedback, or?
Yeah, I'd say the most challenging thing is, when you're in school, you kind of learn sort of like, different ways of doing things. Like, for example, sorting, right? Like knowing that like empirically, O of n is better than O of n squared, right? Like you learn these kinds of things, but in the real world, I think that the most challenging thing is that practically you kind of have to think on more of a practical sense, in that there's almost never a right answer, right? You kind of have to understand what your assumptions are, what the goal you're trying to achieve is, what the operating model of how people are going to use the system that you build. There's a lot more considerations that go into that, and I think I wouldn't have known that had I not been exposed to it in a working environment.
Cool. And also, the point you mentioned in your career, and it sounds like it was kind of changing for you. It was that manager that saw your potential and, first of all, highlighted this to you that you can. This sounds to me that getting a mentor is very important for the beginners. And first of all, from just the belief point of view, just to believe about in yourself.
Yeah, I definitely I would agree with that. Having a mentor, having someone who understands your situation and what your desired growth path is, I think is incredibly important. Um, I honestly wasn't sure where I wanted to take my career. There was actually a point in my in I would say before I had this manager, I thought, hey, I'm just going to be happy being an individual contributor as an intermediate individual contributor for the rest of my life. My mom, she's always been an IC, individual contributor, in software QA realm, and she's been able to command pretty competitive salaries as a result. She didn't have to have too many responsibilities. She had the flexibility of working from home. Like I didn't see any sort of need for myself to accomplish anything more. But having this mentor who sort of pointed out my potential and showing me that like other potential options that I could take my career and seeing others, like for example, there was many other leaders within the organization that I would look up to. And like never in a million years would I thought I would be able to do the job that they were doing. But it's because of this one manager and mentor who believed in me. He truly believed in me, and he actually gave me critical feedback that no other manager had given me before, and pointed out things that I should work on and improve. Whether it's on my technical design skills or my communication and collaboration skills, or whatever it is, he definitely did not hold back and helped me improve on those aspects. Half of it was also the way he delivered it, right, in a way that I was receptive to. I think had he done so in a way that was not sort of in line with thinking about me and motivating me, I don't think I would have been as receptive to receiving such critical feedback.
Talking about the critical feedback, it's always harmful. How did you handle this? And maybe some advice.
Yeah, so I mean, like I think receiving critical feedback is tough. I think giving critical feedback is also very tough. There's this book that we were all required to read. It's called Crucial Conversations, and I would say this was a pretty life-changing book for me in that it talks about how depending on how you deliver critical feedback or the intentions behind the critical feedback that you're given. It will greatly affect how the receiver receives that feedback. If they know that you're on their team, if they know that they can trust you, if they know that that you have their best interests at heart, that critical feedback will be taken to heart and more likely than not worked on. And that's one thing that I learned from this manager. This manager definitely had my best interests at heart, and any sort of critical feedback I knew was just helping me get stronger, helping me get better. And so taking that sort of perspective, it allowed me to work on improving myself as opposed to rejecting his feedback. I've learned this over the course of years as a manager myself as well in delivering critical feedback to my direct reports. The very first thing I need to establish is that trust. For them to trust that any critical feedback that I share with them is really for their best interests and in ways to help motivate and achieve their career goals. And so I try to maintain that philosophy in my own management style as well.
Cool. And one more question about the feedback. We are talking about receiving the negative feedback, which is hard, but how can junior developers especially, well, it's applicable for any kind of level, but for beginners, it's much harder. How to provide the critical feedback back? Because not all managers are like yours one and like you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great point. But I mean, I think there's a question that I learned. There was a question that was asked when I was going through management training when I first became a manager, and it was a trick question they asked. So, who manages your career? Um, is it your manager that manages your career, or is there someone else that manages your career? A lot of people, that junior people, they'll say, yeah, my manager manages my career. They're my boss. They dictate what I do, what I don't do, and so they manage my career. That's actually false. And uh, basically, if you have that kind of mentality that someone else has full control over your life, then you're never going to be able to feel like you can improve your own situation. When you take the philosophy that you manage your own career, and you make decisions that either better your situation, or keep yourself in a situation that's not good for yourself, where you're not learning or not growing, and that you take full accountability for those decisions, then you have some agency over how to direct your career. So if you find yourself in a situation where your boss is micromanaging every single little thing you do, and you don't feel like you're growing or learning or given enough autonomy, you know you might want to find another opportunity. Look elsewhere for another job where you can get that opportunity to grow and learn. That's kind of on you. You don't need to accept that manager, right? Whenever you interview at a company, it's interviewing both ways. They're not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them. You're looking at what your own growth opportunities are. And so take the initiative, to make sure that you're setting career goals for yourself, and making sure that your manager, or your mentors or leaders, or wherever you end up, are providing opportunities for you to work towards achieving those goals. And so, be very active in your own career development. Don't just only rely on your manager.
And the question I will ask everybody in my podcast: what was your greatest failure during the beginning of the career? A technical or communication, any?
Yeah. Let's see. Biggest failure. Yeah, I'm trying to think back. Like the beginning of my career was, uh, let's see, I was at that company for 11 and a half years. I'm at Takeoff for about 3.5 years. So about 15 years total in my career. I've made a lot of mistakes. I honestly, like, the reason why failures don't stand out in my mind, because I've been in a mindset of that failures are good. They're good learning opportunities. Like, when I think back on the beginning of my career, and I think of failures that stand out to me, I remember this one time where I had a teammate who, she wasn't carrying her weight, and I kept escalating to my boss, hey, like, I feel like I have to work twice as hard to keep things afloat. Why don't you just fire her? Like, then it'll be fair. And then what this boss did. This boss ended up making me her manager, and he said, "Okay, here, this is your problem. You go fix it. You can go fire her if you want to." When it became my problem, it changed my entire perspective. I I then realized that, hey, her success is also my success. And so I had to I instead of sort of blaming her for not carrying her weight, I then instead flipped it around, had a quick conversation. Hey, what can I do to help support you and help you get better? And that actually changed. Not only did it change the conversation, but it changed her motivation, and she became, I would say, 10 times more productive, and also kind of sparked her and jump started her career. And last I looked, she got promoted twice since leaving me as her manager. And so like, I would say my biggest failure in the early days of when I first became a manager was thinking that everything was black and white. Thinking that if someone's not performing, the only answer is to fire them. And I've had many other failures along the way in which I've had really good learning experiences. And so, like, I think all of those have kind of made me the person that I am today. I'm still not perfect. I think, like, having humility, approaching work with humbleness, and asking questions in a genuine way, I find that those are the people I love working with the most, and I'm trying to also emulate that myself, understanding that no one ever has all of the right answers, and that the way that you figure things out together is that you ask questions and then you fail and you learn from that failure.
I will definitely rephrase my question in the future. I will ask for not the biggest failure, but the best failure.
Okay.
Because yeah, that's great. Definitely.
And like it was incredible that instead of saying that I was too immature to handle it, he instead set me up with a challenge that I overcame. And it was because of that example that I continue to want to learn more and better myself, because I realized that it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. Everyone can win.
According to your story, it looks like, to summarize, the very important things for growing in this career, especially at the beginning, is first of all, learning, a lot of learning, and a little bit learning more. Um, Second is to find a mentor and a friend. I mean, somebody who will definitely interested in your career or your growth. And um, taking failures as points of to grow, because we all make failures. How much time did you spend to find your first job?
Yeah. So I think I was considered like one of the maybe like in the middle slash late. I started applying to jobs pretty much right upon graduation. I maybe took like 2 weeks off total, and then I started applying to jobs. And then I would say I got a I applied to, I want to say like something like uh, up to 10 different positions. I tried going through headhunters. I've tried going directly through a direct application. I've tried going through referrals. I ended up, with 2 job offers roughly 2 months after my job search. So it did take a little while to land opportunities in which I could consider. But yeah, I ended up finding a job that I was very happy with and obviously stuck with for 11 and a half years.
How long ago it was when you started?
2007. So yeah, that brings me September of 2007,
15
which
years.
brings me to 15 years
15
this
years.
September. Yeah.
Yeah. And um, how do you think, what changed in this process and in this challenges and also opportunities for the beginners in this 15 years? So what what is still relevant and what is not, and what additional problems and possibilities appeared?
Yeah, I would say that at the start of my career, it was less, maybe it was less competitive than it is today. Like I think ever since like dot-com boom and the FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, what else? Google, what's the other one? Apple, right? Ever since these tech jobs became such like attractive jobs, with flexible lifestyles, high pay, whatnot. It's since become so much more competitive to land a job in this space, and so I think that's one major difference in the last 15 years. What I'll say is that what's still important is that having a growth mindset, having a continuous learning mindset. Technology is constantly changing. If you pin your entire career to a single technology, no matter how cool it is, like let's say React or Angular JS, right? There's always going to be some technology that seems like the coolest thing ever that you should just hinge your entire career off of. I would advise strongly against that. I think because technology changes and changes significantly every 5 years, it's important to keep that growth mindset. It's important to constantly be hungry for learning and understanding ways at which you could be doing things better. And so, I would say that like in the last 15 years, that's the thing that continues to remain constant is those who do have that The turtle wins the race over the hare, right? Like I think it's really popular to see a lot of boot camps these days. I'm not saying anything against boot camps. I think boot camps are great to just sort of jumpstart and get yourself involved in understanding what it takes to learn some of the basics of coding to get something done. But there's a lot more fundamentals that like I would encourage people to be hungry to learn, and to not just learn the concepts, but to put them into practice. And so as landscape for technology becomes more and more competitive, the way that you stand out from the rest of the crowd is that continuous learning mindset. No matter how slow it is, as long as you are continuing to learn, you're always going to be getting better while someone else is standing still. Yeah, and there's a saying that I one of my old technology leaders used to say, which is, like don't ever approach this yourself alone. There's an old African saying that says it's better if you want to walk far, walk. If you want to go fast, walk alone. If you want to go far, walk together. And collaboration with others is you'll find is really, really important. Learning how to collaborate with others and work with others. I think this is something which is not emphasized enough in these boot camps and whatnot. But something in which will definitely set you up for more practical skills in a job.
Thank you for your story. I hope we will meet again and we'll be able to talk more detailed on some parts. I hope not only on the high level, but also about the details and maybe something very technical. But that's all for today. Thank you very much, David, for your time. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and thank everybody for watching. Please share, subscribe, and if you like it, write the comments. And I hope we will continue our podcast series. Bye, David. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Vlad.